Hey guys. Okay, we'll start shortly, but we just normally give people a couple of minutes just to join. And we all know what it's like, that ping goes off, doesn't it, to tell us that you're supposed to be somewhere. So we're going to be talking today with Ashleen. I'm really paranoid about getting your name wrong now because I've been saying
This
it
is
for
so
this whole
funny, isn't
time.
it? Yeah. I should have just let you go with it, but that's Irish names for you. We just like to test
Ash.
people, I think.
I
Ash.
think I'll go with
Oh,
the
that's
suggestion of
easiest.
Ash. And we're going to be talking about harnessing data for your marketing and kind of helping it to win clients, helping it to build rapport internally, and the power of insights. So we normally give it till just sort of 3 minutes past, and then we'll kind of start from there. So yeah, a couple of minutes and then we'll get going. So apologies for it being on a Friday this week. Very selfishly, I went on a holiday.
We'll have to forgive you, Katie.
I know.
I think a holiday is well needed. When you work in some sort of recruitment industry, a holiday goes without saying.
Yeah. At one point, I was sitting on a beach in Turkey, like earlier this week, thinking, I think I could do it from here. It would be fine.
I think we all have those moments when we're on holidays, so don't we? We're like, you know what, this work from home stuff is great. Like I could just move out here, and we forget about the actual logistics of working in a different country and moving your whole life.
No, can you
So
imagine?
Turkey would be a nice spot to do it.
It would. I feel like everybody would have left the minute they'd come on and seen like the beach in the background. Though I think I would have left if I'd gone onto a webinar. Someone was sitting on the beach with a cocktail.
It'd be hard to be happy for you.
yeah, really hot.
For sure.
Give it a few seconds.
Fab.
And then we'll make a start. Right. Scanning. Great. I'll go back to the beginning and right. Okay, we'll make a start. I'll just share my screen back again. Sorry. Hopefully everyone can see that. It's not by any means death by PowerPoint. In fact, we don't even have a sort of PowerPoint presentation to run through. It's going to be me sort of interviewing Ash around kind of data and just discussing like we normally do on the webinars. And there is the Q&A up the top. So if people want to kind of add any questions as we go through, and then we'll be able to answer them at the end. You can use the chat facility as well as needed. If there's anything kind of urgent, then pinboard it on there and then we'll be able to address it at the end. We try to always keep them to an hour max, but they're normally about 40 minutes kind of talking through. And then we've just got like sort of bits of info at the end. Yeah, so we'll make a start. So thank you for joining me, Ash.
Thanks, Katie.
So for those who haven't been here before, I'm Katie. I'm a fractional marketing director in the recruitment space. Been working in recruitment now for nearly 10 years. Specialist in recruitment for 10 years. Been working in marketing for sort of over 25 years now, in every sector, in every kind of walk of what marketing would be, from sort of like TV commercials right down to kind of like content writing and on the ground. And I tend to help people now from the perspective of planning and strategy behind marketing. And then I'm going to let Ash introduce herself, who is our data expert. Look at this, the data pro you are. You've been named.
I don't think I've ever been called that, but I like it, Katie. I think there's a definitely ring to it. But no, thank you so much for having me and for everybody jumping on. So my name is Ash or Ashling. That's why we were testing Katie at the start. There's no H because it's an Irish name, of course, and we like to confuse absolutely everything. But Ashling or Ash, and I suppose I started in recruitment, fell into recruitment when I was on my working holiday visa in Sydney, and Yeah, like everyone ends up enjoying it, loving to hate recruitment at some points. And when I moved back to Ireland then in 2022, we had used the platform Recruiter Insider at the agency I worked at in Sydney, and Justin, who owns Recruiter Insider, needed somebody this side of the world to be the face of the company. So that's how that all happened. And it's a feedback platform for recruitment agencies, essentially, for all aspects of the recruitment process. So it is tech. And if anyone who knows me, they know I'm not tech savvy at all. So I don't know how this has happened, but here we are.
It's always the way. I love everybody in recruitment. I think I've met like 3 recruiters who said to me that they actually wanted to work in recruitment, so they sort it out, like, and then every other hundreds of people that I've met have all gone, I fell into recruitment. I find it really interesting.
It's so funny, and particularly in Sydney as well, or Australia in general, because it's a way to get sponsored. So all of a sudden, there's people want to get into recruitment, but it's funny how it happens. It's a lot of Irish and English, and not Aussies actually.
Yeah, doing that
it
job.
turns out. Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now on this. I've jumped ahead about 10 slides there. Okay, so obviously, Ash, I sent you over the questions before, and we'll kind of go through them. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just how you can kind of differentiate yourself with data. And I know that's something that you do quite a lot and you help recruiters with quite often. But what I want to do is talk about like the granular stuff of it, not how the tech supports it, but just more around like what can they do? How can they use data to kind of help position themselves? So can you think or can you give us examples of like the type of reports or data points that can be used to help recruiters showcase like their value and expertise?
Completely. And I think a lot of agencies have that want where they want to be able to differentiate, because we all have loads of competitors in the industry, and it's hard to differentiate. We do a lot of the same jobs, we say a lot of the same things in terms of we're the best in the business, we have the best candidates, but there's few that are actually able to back that up in a meaningful way and showcase that they are the experts in that particular market. So I think what you're looking at when it comes to how you can do it, it comes down to being able to showcase the quality of the candidates that you provide your clients. I think that's one of the key things, because I hear it so often with the best candidates in the market, whatever that might be. But what a lot of our agencies will do, they'll actually showcase that, and they'll prove what their current clients say about the quality of the shortlist they provide and the candidates in that, the quality of the candidates when they first start the role, and even up to 12 months later. So it gives prospect clients, when they are reaching out for business development or whatever the case may be, it gives them a really good, I suppose, position to provide that credibility and say, we have the best candidates in the market, and this is what our clients actually say about the quality of them. Not just at placement stage, but all the way up to 12 months later. So I think that's a key one, being able to manage that. And of course, that can be automated, but from a manual point of view, like it's relatively easy to do that too, in terms of just sticking with your clients and following up for that feedback from them and asking quite direct questions. So a lot of the time we have recruiters and they'll say, oh, is everything going well? But being specific about what would you say about the quality of the candidate we've just provided you, things like that, or the quality of the service is another good one. Being able to showcase to prospect clients, I suppose things like how you provided regular updates and what they would say about that, or how you worked with them to get a particular candidate, So in terms of examples, there's loads there, but I think the most effective ones that we see are things like your quality of candidates, quality of the service you provide. Fill rates are also a really good one. Or interview to placement ratios, anything like that you can do, and anyone can do it. You don't need a third-party software to do it necessarily. Be a bit more manual, of course, but I think if it's part of your process, it's a really good tool to have and a base to have that you can share then with prospect clients.
Yeah, and I think it does go a long way. Like, people like data, don't they? People like stats. If you've got those kind of stats to hand and they're backed up and by this survey, so you can showcase where it's come from rather than it being just a gut feel of, you know, we
Yeah,
work, everybody says we work with the best candidates in the market, don't they? You know, everybody
completely.
wants to say that they've got the biggest talent pool or the strongest, or, you know, they can unearth the people. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen quite often, you know, things like stats on people who weren't even looking for jobs versus, so almost hunted versus
Yeah.
people actively looking. You know, like I think that's a really good stat if you're trying to kind of showcase that as a service that you particularly proud of, or because again, it is something that people talk about a lot,
Yeah.
but don't have the stats to back it up. So I
Completely.
think,
You
yeah,
spot on. And I think you mentioned it there as well, that people actually like the numbers, and they do because it gives context, you
yeah,
know, and it gives them something to measure. And I think what it also does when you can provide that type of information to a client is it shows that you prioritize it, that it's important to you, that you measure it, that you're holding yourself accountable. And I think they're huge parts of that as well. I mean, if someone was selling to you and they were able to say, we actually measure this throughout the entire hiring process, not just place candidates or, you know, like you touched on there, I think that says a lot about them and the agency and what's important to them,
yeah.
more than anything else.
Yeah, especially given, you know, that, and there has been like a real shift over sort of the last 10 years. Just the period I've been in, that I've seen that from that kind of contingency mindset to more that value added piece and
Yeah.
showcasing. And I hear a lot of people talking about, you know, we are beyond the bum on seat kind of recruitment. It is about that
Yeah.
value add, and it's about long-term relationships and things. So I guess it becomes even more important to kind of be able to measure that from start to finish, and not just that bit of kind of like field placements.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so if we were kind of putting together this sort of presentation, is there anything else that you've seen that sort of resonates with different types of clients other than those kind of key things?
Yeah, I think what I find happens a lot in age, or consultants might reach out for, you know, different reasons, but when they're putting together information or data, one of the first questions I'll actually ask them is about the client and what are the client's pain points. Because depending on who you're actually presenting to, it's going to be important to understand what they're going to be interested in hearing about. Because what can end up happening is just throwing numbers at a client, no matter what they are, that aren't relevant. It kind of dilutes the effectiveness of them. So I think key thing when it does come to presentations and when you are speaking with clients is actually understanding first what's important to them and then delivering the data that's going to be relevant to them. But what we do find a lot working quite well now is case studies. So looking at clients in isolation, and of course data is great, but I think you need to be able to tell a story around it, or talk about it in a way that's, you know, relevant to them. And I think case studies are a really good way to do that.
Yeah,
When you pick a client, pick a job, and work on that in isolation. And again, it can take a bit of time, but it might be as simple as what the candidate said about the hiring process, what the client said about the hiring process, the outcome, and so on. And once you've one case study done, it can be reused and reused, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So, of course, it can be quite manual at the beginning, but if you make feedback and specific feedback part of your hiring process, I think that it'll come back in tenfold in terms of being able to reuse it,
yeah.
no matter who you're speaking with.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we've talked quite a lot in all of these webinars, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing me talk about like the customer avatars and understanding your customer. And you're exactly right. This is no different to that point. If what it is you're presenting needs to resonate with them, it needs to be tailored to them. It needs to kind of pick on them pain points. So if you know, it's a particular candidate short market, or you know that the people, if you're trying to get people to move from perm to contract or something like that, then you can sort of guide them figures around that to ensure that you're kind of
Completely.
resonating exactly with who it is that's needed.
For sure.
So One of the things that we're talking about there is obviously collecting this data, and I'm sort of diverging slightly, but I just think it's a worthwhile kind of discussion point. It's just around like that survey piece, and that, you know, that is, I typically see in recruiters, it is a piece that they tend to miss in their kind of loop of feedback. You know, they'll perhaps be reliant on the consultant getting some feedback, or, you know, that you might have like an ops or a marketing person that's got some kind of automation set up. But it can be a challenge as well, getting clients to kind of feedback, or get them to fill out a survey, or get them to kind of participate. Have you seen anything that's worked particularly well in sort of incentivizing clients or candidates to partake in surveys?
Yeah, and that's such a good point, Katie, as well. It can be hard to ask for feedback, and I think there's no denying that, and you know, there's definitely no downplaying that, because it can be. I suppose you're kind of putting yourself out there in a way, and opening yourself up to maybe feedback that can be hard to hear, great to hear. Again, it's hard to say, but the one, I suppose, overall, and just to give people a bit of context and numbers, I suppose, as well, the average response rate that we get is around 25 to 30% of all of the emails that we share with candidates and clients, which is actually a relatively high number, because a lot of the surveys, other platforms or surveys in different industries, the average can be about 11 to 15%. Okay, so recruitment is actually pretty high up there, which is good to hear. And of course, some agencies will want to just leave the emails go and see what happens. But when it comes to getting feedback, the most effective way to actually get it is to set the expectation from the very beginning. So when you're taking that job brief from a client, just actually, you know, mentioning to them that you will want feedback throughout the process. It'll come in this format, and you'd love for them to share it, and give them the why as well. So do you want it for learning and development? Do you want it so that you can provide it to potentially future clients? To like give them the why, because you're helping them, and the likelihood is that they're going to want to help you back when they can as well. So I think setting the expectation, particularly with clients from the very outset, is the most effective way to get clients to come back. And it's the same with candidates. Just managing that at the very beginning, to say we'll want feedback throughout the process. It really helps us, telling them the why. And the third thing then is providing instructions, because you know, when you're asked for a review, sometimes you don't know where to start, or if you're asked for feedback, you don't. Some people aren't good at putting that type of information together. Whereas if you're asking specific questions, so you might have just prepped a candidate for an interview, for a client interview, for example, and you might have, as part of your process, 3, 4, 5 questions you want to ask them on how they thought that the interview prep that you did was. And I think that's a really good prompt for candidates or whoever you're speaking to, is just to provide instructions or ask specific questions, because when it's an open-ended one, that's where you find people are saying, oh, I'll get back to that. You know, it's a little bit harder for them to come up with it sometimes. So I don't know if you found that as well, Katie, on your side.
We've quite often found, you know, things like testimonials and kind of some levels of feedback, that sometimes it pays dividends to write it for the clients and almost send it to them, to be like, we've put this together, are you happy with this? Feel free to edit it. Because obviously it takes the onus off them having to do anything. And I think you're exactly right. It's making the process as easy as possible for people is the key to kind of getting feedback and getting that kind of participation from people. Because, you know, typically everybody's busy, aren't they? Everybody puts it to the side, which I know I do. You think, oh, that's not like business critical, so I'll do that tomorrow.
And even if a restaurant asks me and I've had the most amazing meal, sometimes it takes me a week or two. And you're thinking this only takes 2 seconds when you get down to it. But when you're just busy, you're going from here to there. But it's worse in a work environment, because you are actually, it's like you say, it's not business critical, and it goes down the list. So I love the idea of you actually prompting them with an actual testimonial to give them an idea of what it can or should look like, and all they have to reply is perfect, you know, and again, just making it as easy as possible. That's I love it.
Because we've tried in varying clients, we've tried like surveys, and we've got some set up, like automation set up, but our numbers definitely aren't sort of hitting that 25%. Kind of a lot smaller, like especially on the candidate side, trying to get like feedback and things. Is there any key timings when you think is best to kind of have those sort of set out? When should you be asking for feedback?
I actually was just going to touch on it as you said it there, because a lot of the time it's the timing of the emails.
Yeah.
And in our experience with the platform, and it is automated, so this does make it a little bit easier, and it's going to be hard to
Yeah.
remember it for everybody. But for example, the candidate has just been submitted to the role on the system. That's when we'll reach out to them then and ask them to review how they were told about the role. Did they get information on the job? All of this sort of stuff. When they've completed their client interview, we'll ask them to review that experience, and then at the placement stage. So it's very timed. Now,
Yeah.
I appreciate that would be a lot of work, or could be a lot of work to do manually. So it might be an idea to pick one stage of the hiring process that you actually want feedback on, and make it part of your process that an email goes to that candidate or whoever is relevant to do it at that point in time, because timing is everything. It's when it's fresh in their minds, and that definitely impacts response rate. Because if it's something they've forgotten about, or if it feels in the past, or potentially after a client interview and they've got a rejection at that particular stage, sometimes at that stage they're not interested anymore and they've moved on to something else. So timing is important. So it would be worthwhile bearing that in mind.
Yeah, I always think as well, you know, like with testimonials and things, when we've worked on projects to get them in, it is time critical. You know, you've got to hit the points where then people really love you. So, you know, when somebody's had an offer, when somebody's just about to, you know, they've had an offer accepted by a candidate, or the person's just started, or, you know, those are kind of key points where you think actually they're going to be like, this person's saved my stress, or they've made my life easier, and by finding the perfect person for me. That's when you get like the really great testimonials, and then, you know, hopefully 3 months in you'll get another really great one, because then I've made such a difference to the business.
Exactly. But a few weeks later you're kind of old news. They're moved on to something totally different. So the timing for that it's so true. It's funny that I noticed that as well, but it's huge without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the easier you can make that process, the better. So having those automation tools, I know that your system does it, but there's obviously lots of other kind of automation tools that also have kind of surveys and things on. But I think the thing is, it's what you do, and I know we'll kind of touch on this, but what you do with the data when you get it back, that is something really, really key, because if you're doing these things manually, it's very different than trying to transform that data or that insight into something leverageable. And that's, I think, where systems like yours are perfect for that, as in trying to kind of giving that insight and giving that bit of information that's needed, rather than trying to, you know, if you've got an inbox that's filling up with people's surveys, or you're just getting emails with sort of feedback coming in, it's a lot of internal processes that you need to have in place to ensure, you know, because there's nothing worse than getting a bad feedback and not doing anything about it. You know, people will remember how you deal with that feedback rather than what the feedback was about 9 times out of 10. So that's kind of really, really key, is to make sure that we've got that kind of set up and bottleneck that end as well.
Of course, because you've done the hard work by the time you've actually got the feedback. And I suppose, I know we're going to move on to that. The only other thing I was just going to mention is, don't be afraid to follow up, because you might think, I've sent it now, I'm not going to bother them again. If they want to do it, they'll do it. But actually they need prompt, and we all need a bit of a nudge sometimes. You do want to do it, but if it gets put in the list and you're not followed up on, it could easily get forgotten about. So you've done the hard work by the time your feedback has come through, or a testimonial, or your video testimonial, whatever format it's come through. You've done the really hard graft at that point in time. So like you said, Katie, it's now about how do we get it out there so that we can grow the desk. And I think that's the next step after gathering the testimonial, or whatever the feedback you were looking for.
And then in terms of from a consultant perspective as well, I guess, if you're thinking about sort of incentivizing it or trying to encourage them to do that follow-up piece, you know, it's just another reason for them to speak to the client as well, to follow up, which is only going to add to the relationship moving forward. You know, and so I never see it as a bad thing of people having to follow up. I know consultants see it sometimes as a bit of a, oh God, I've got to follow up with this, but actually it's a valid reason to speak to somebody, isn't it? And you're not trying to sell them anything. So it becomes
nicer. Totally. It's actually a nicer way to reach out to them than any jobs going or what's been happening, you know? So it's a little bit more focused. And it's a good excuse, like you say, to keep front of mind so that they are reaching out when the time does come. So, and it also gives them a chance to think about what is great about working with you as their consultant. Because sometimes they take it for granted, they pay the invoice and they'll reach out whenever they need it again, potentially. But like when you actually mention to them or kind of allude in a prompt about allude to the amount of work that you've actually done in getting this candidate across the line, a lot of clients aren't actually aware of this. So even we find when the platform will reach out to a hiring manager to ask for feedback, they'll answer lots of different questions depending on what stage they are, etc., etc. But most hiring managers don't realize the work that goes into actually getting a candidate in front of them, to prepping them for interview, to managing a placement. And you're actually highlighting what you're doing to them in a very discreet kind of way.
I really love that idea of using that kind of survey to just almost tick off all of the things that you've done, like how did we do in this, how do we do in that, because exactly that, it does just showcase exactly what it is that you've done, the processes that they've gone through, because they don't always, it's not always visible, is it?
It's not. And then they just see the massive invoice coming through and they're like, this seems too easy. So it is important to just highlight actually a lot of work goes into getting that candidate to you and starting. So it can be a really effective way to do that for sure.
Now I feel like we've probably covered part of this. The next bit was around like turning that feedback into kind of like qualitative data. But is there anything that you think that we've missed in terms of kind of from a feedback perspective, what kind of how you can use that into data points for presentations when you're kind of talking to new or potential clients?
Yeah. And most definitely, I think depending on how you set up your survey, I think a really good way is, of course, free text is great, but if you can get them to score on a scale of 1 to 5 or a score, like that is where you want to be, because that's your numbers. A lot of people leave it free text, but sometimes that can be more brain power for a candidate to have to do and come up with the information. Whereas if it's a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 10, whatever format you want to do it, that can be really, really effective for those type of open questions. And of course, leave them an opportunity to leave a testimonial or a written feedback. But I think in terms of you being able to use the data then for a marketing perspective, numbers, this is where the numbers come in, or the scale, because that's when you can really, really highlight it. And I suppose a lot of what the platform is, just for people's information, of course, it's great to get feedback, but it's all about getting it out there. So there's a huge emphasis on the marketing side of it. So if you get a testimonial, we regularly have testimonial Tuesdays, and a lot of our agencies will post a testimonial every Tuesday, and it's just easy social proof that's going out for them to their network every week. And don't be afraid to reuse testimonials. You're not, like, if you're collecting them manually, it's not as if they're going to be coming in a huge amount, but reuse them. So you might do it today, you might do it again in 6-8 weeks time, and just get them out there by making it a weekly process as well.
I think people have a fear, don't they, of reusing case studies or reusing testimonials, because they see it in their feed. But, you know, like, I don't see every single thing of all of the companies that I follow. I wouldn't remember something that they posted 6 weeks ago in my LinkedIn feed. And unlike recruiters, the rest of the world don't sit on LinkedIn all day, you know. So it's probably highly unlikely that they would ever remember seeing that same kind of feedback, and it's great as well to tag people in where you can, if it's confidential, but you know, if you can tag people, it will increase the shares and kind of increase the reach further of those points. And one other thing, that I just noted down was just about like referrals. So like when it comes to sort of strong branding, both from a perspective of like clients that might potentially want to use you, but ultimately also to attract new consultants. So like referrals, just stats on the number of referrals that you get and things like that can make a big difference too. You know, again, it goes to show that social proof, help kind of, and I think that's something that nowadays is so needed. You know, everybody's looking for social proof. People take recommendations over kind of listings or online listings or whatever it is that people would now use to find a recruitment consultant. I see it all the time, like people putting on LinkedIn asking for recommendations.
And we don't even go to restaurants anymore without quickly having a quick look and seeing what they're rated on Google or TripAdvisor. Like, you don't do anything anymore without checking reviews. And I think that's where it becomes really important from a marketing point of view, particularly on LinkedIn, because I can't remember the stat, and I should have had a prep for today, but there's a huge percentage of candidates who will look at a profile or a client before they'll ever reach out to you. So even if you posted a testimonial and you do it weekly, they're seeing this. And again, that's your review, that's your testimonial that's coming up. It's a 2-minute job on Canva. Have a template done for yourself. Your own image on it can be quite helpful as well. You'll know better about that, Katie, of course. But the social proof is absolutely huge. And I think referrals is a really good indicator of social proof as well, because what you'll find, and this is really interesting, that we find, because we will track how many referrals you get, what's the conversion of referrals. So if you get a referral, does it convert to a placement? Does it convert to a client interview? And actually tracking those can be really helpful for you. But what we found with referral bonuses, like we've some agencies who will have no referral bonus, they'll get nothing, or they'll have £1,000, for example. And it has been really interesting. It doesn't matter. It turns out it doesn't matter what the number is in terms of your referral bonus or whether you have one or not. The biggest indicator of the consultants who receive the most amount of referrals is actually their candidate experience score, which actually makes sense, because even if I was working with a recruiter and there was an £1,000 bonus, if I've had a terrible experience with them, I'm never going to refer a friend, despite the fact that I could earn £1,000. But it's actually the consultants with the best candidates experience scores. They're the consultants with the highest number of referrals and conversions to placement then as well. So you can focus a lot on the bonus and, you know, think that's attracting candidates to you, but it's actually your experience, the service that you provide. So we see that all of the time.
And it does make me kind of wonder as well, you know, like when you're asking for them referrals, you know, should it almost be at consultant level rather than like a company level, that it becomes like a bit of a more personalized request for those referrals? Sorry, my mind's going off on a tangent there. I'm thinking about projects that I'm involved in, like, actually. Okay.
No, totally.
And I think that leads nicely into how data can also help identify sort of training needs and like where consultants are in need of some support and areas that they could do of improving. And I guess, you know, that sort of feedback and that cycle of feedback and, you know, the scores on the candidate experience and client experience is going to help with that massively internally as well, because, you know, it's easy to sort of gauge people on what figures, and obviously that is a key measure for any recruiter. But I do think the experience part needs to become more, you know, all the talks that I listen to about marketing nowadays in recruitment, it's all about the candidate experience, it's all about the client experience, and how we need to evolve that, how it needs to be, you know, end to end. It's no longer kind of fill that placement on to the next one. Do you is there anything else that you think helps sort of identify skills gaps or areas of growth from the kind of data that you collect?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually comes down to the feedback from the candidates and clients, essentially, because it's real time. You've just done the role. It's not you're getting feedback from a role that you worked 3 months ago, you know. So I think that real time learning is huge. And it also actually indicates, and you'll see this coming up yourselves if you do manually send out feedback forms, etc. But you might actually notice candidate trends, because we see it all the time. Like what candidates or clients might mark harsher on now didn't matter to them much 12 months ago or 18 months ago, for example. So I think that's a really good way of identifying what's happening in the market as well, and what the changing patterns are. But it's most definitely, like, I suppose your candidates and clients are going to be the people who are going to give you the information, what's happening in the market, you know. So if you're gathering that data regularly, you're going to be across a lot of that type of training needs, and also market insights, what potentially is going on in the industry. But it can also be a way to, like, I suppose, reward consultants as well, knowing who are, you know, I suppose we focus a lot on scores, but one metric that we focus on a huge amount is response rates. And it often gets forgotten about, but you'll find the consultants with the higher response rates, they're the ones building the relationships with candidates, building really strong relationships, because they're the ones constantly coming back and doing the reviews for that consultant. If you're kind of half building review or relationships with candidates, the chances of them actually sitting down and doing a little bit of favor for you or feedback is kind of lessens as you go. So while you can focus on the score, the response rate is really indicative as well of the relationships that you are building with candidates and clients.
Okay. And then kind of focusing a bit more on the marketing side of it now. I know that, for instance, your platform has like a testimonial widget thing, doesn't it, that will take it and then it will feed it through to like socials and but is there an easy way to get from that data? If we were doing it manually, how would you do it if you didn't have your system?
Yeah, good question. I think, look, the main thing is getting the testimonials. I think that's the hardest part. But if you have them, you're going to just have to manually update them on the website, and everyone's going to probably have widgets on their website no matter what. It's going to be really, I don't know how they work individually, but to be honest with you, it's just that you don't leave your testimonials sitting there in an email, that you are getting them out there, whether it's on your socials, whether it's updating your website. I think that's where it becomes really important.
Yeah, and that goes back to that thing we talked about earlier of, like, you need to ensure that the process is end-to-end internally. So you know, you can gather all the data in the world, but unless somebody turns it into something meaningful and does something with it, then it's pointless collecting the data.
Pretty much. And some people get daunted by having to do another job and add to the already massive to-do list. But I think if you have your Canva template, for example, set up, you're just copy and pasting the new testimonial in there, and you're saving yourself a huge amount of time then in the long run when it's already waiting for you. So I think once it's a little bit hard work at the start from the manual point of view, but when you've it all up and running, it's going to run like clockwork, and it's going to be so easy for your marketing to just be getting those out there, the social proof, and it's only getting more and more important now. People, like we were saying, people want to see it, the social proof, for sure.
Yeah, and I know obviously video is a big thing now. Everybody wants video, and have you seen like a change in that? Are you seeing more kind of video testimonials and things coming through? Are people sort of adapting to it more?
They are. I definitely think we have an option to do video testimonials, but they're not popular, I have to say. People are happier to just like write a few words. And it is a bit easier, I suppose. Now ourselves, we use a platform called Vocal Video, and that's where we can share links with our clients or agencies, and they'll do reviews or give feedback on our product, let's say, or their experience with us here at Recruiter Insider. And they're great. They're absolutely amazing. I think they're so valuable when you get them. But anyone could use a Zoom account. I think you'd know better if you can use it on Teams, for example, and just record. But it might be no harm to like set up. And I see some agencies doing this, an interview with a client and talking about the hiring process and how it helped them. Because if you can get some video testimonials, they're huge. And they also can be broken down into many written testimonials if you just cut some of the quotes out of it and put them into written. So it's amazing content to have. So that could be a focus for people as well, is to actually just focus on the video testimonials and again, make a lot more content out of that. If you have those, generally you need quite good relationships. I don't know, do you find the same? It's usually the clients or the hiring managers that you work with most closely and have a good relationship with, they might be more likely to do something like the video testimonial.
People still have like this video fear, don't they, of kind of thinking that something bad's going to happen when they're talking into a video. But yeah, like I use Teams to record mine and do little videos and things, because you can start a meeting, record it, and then it's all there. Like Teams is good for stuff like that, I find. Have you, and one of the things that I am sort of thinking about with this whole feedback and how you can utilize it and was that you don't often see consultants putting stuff out around, like, you know, I've scored my score, my candidate experience is X, my client experience is Y. It isn't something that you see. So, you know, and I'm connected to a lot of recruiters, and I do think that that could be something that really like made people stand out as well, to really kind of talk about that a bit more, be a bit more vocal about like their scores, make it a bit more transparent about what their score is. You know, like if you look at people like Volkswagen, for instance, and you go onto their reviews, they'll show the bad ones even on their websites, and you can see like what they've done to remedy it and stuff like that. So I think there is always that fear in industries that, you know, not to put anything negative out. I remember years ago, and that's why I picked Volkswagen, that's where I've worked for years and years, but we used to have like a real fear of publishing anything that was bad. So they'd be trying to take down reviews on Google, and I think it would be refreshing to see more recruiters being a bit more honest about the experience that they give, and authentic. We talk about that a lot, about people being authentic, because now people do but still buy from people. So the more authentic you can be about like the feedback that you're getting or how you've dealt with stuff can make a big difference. Have you seen anything, sorry, I was just going to say, have you seen anything of anybody using it in a different way? So kind of putting out their feedback or doing anything different, like other people putting it on job ads or anything like that, or?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on the more negative feedback and how that can be quite effective as well, and particularly with the hiring process. Some of the questions that you're going to ask your candidates to, you know, give you feedback on, for example, that information, for example, provided who I was going to be meeting with at interview stage or articulated the company background, the culture, etc. A lot of the time, this is information you need from your client. So if you're getting scored a little bit lower for whatever reason, often it's an education piece for your client to say, we're actually, it's affecting our candidate experience if I don't have this information from you up front, you know. So when there is feedback, and sometimes it mightn't be as high as you'd like, or it'd be whatever way it is, sometimes that again isn't a reflection on you, it's potentially on the information you receive from the client. And it's a great way to highlight to them, actually, a thorough job brief is really important. We need to define the hiring process before it starts, you know, different things like that. So that was just one thing I was going to mention on that point. But you were asking about using it in a different way and using data. Course, what I love to see actually is the job ads. So for example, we will gather information and feedback from candidates at a particular client who've been placed at a client, and then when the consultant is recruiting for that client again in the future, the consultant will use that feedback and data about that client as a selling tool. So they'll say, we've placed however many candidates here, and this is what they say about the hiring managers when they first start. This is what they say about the onboarding experience, and this is what they say even 12 months later about working there, you know. Or you can talk about the dropout rates, etc. So I love to see that, and it's something that we work on. We see consultants doing a really good job at that, like as attracting candidates when they're between two competitors. Well, actually, we can show you what candidates say about working there 12 months later, and this is how they experience it. So I think that's a really good way to use data. And we also see some consultants making client packs. So they'll put information about a client that they work with regularly and they recruit for regularly, and they'll talk about what it's like to interview there, you know, maybe put in an org chart, what it's like to start there 12 months later, and have that all in an information pack. So when you are trying to attract candidates, it's a really good, somewhat Bible for them to have on this client and prep them for the entire hiring process, because the stats are there. You might as well, like we were saying, make sure that they're getting out there, that they're being used. And I think that's a really cool way to do it as well.
Yeah, and just my mind was working the opposite way, thinking like that could be really powerful as well for contractors if you've got contractor books, if you've got feedback from clients that you've placed them with, to be able to almost culminate that as well can create a really powerful story rather than it just being skills led, kind of actual experience led.
Totally. And that's something we'll do, and we call it redeployment, where we ask the hiring manager to just share some information about the contractor. So when we know that contractor is coming to an end of their contract, we're already getting them out there, not just with a CV, but they've worked for us before. This is the amazing job that they've done, and here's the backup. So a lot of the time, then your new client or the contractor's new job that they're going into, they won't even look to interview them. They'll trust you. They'll have worked with you, and it's such an easy in. And then again, your redeployment, you're not losing that contractor. You're just getting them to work somewhere else. And again, you don't even have to get an updated CV. You know, it's all the information is there for you. Yeah. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I just wanted to touch on, and I know we're running out of time slightly, but was just around like demonstrating value as well, because you know, quite often people will get asked in to sort of talk about like how can you showcase clients your value if they're trying to renegotiate rates or costs and things like that. And this kind of feedback and data could be priceless to that, especially if it's client specific or industry specific, could be another really powerful tool to add to kind of like your pitch decks or your documents and presentations to those clients to just help kind of demonstrate the value. I know we've talked about kind of a lot of the stats, but is there anything in particular that you've seen with people trying to demonstrate value that they would add outside the sort of kind of stats that we've talked about so far?
Yeah, I love that idea as well, because so often you do have clients pushing back on rates, and if anything, they should be going up, you know. So this definitely does have a lot, I suppose, relevance at the moment. But no, a lot of it, and what I do love is actually having kind of data account management review with clients regularly. So you're providing these stats on a regular basis. A lot of the ones that we've spoken about, but you're highlighting the issues, if there are any, every single time. And I think actually being quite consistent with that can give you a little bit of leeway. Then when you are getting pushback, you're able to provide information to them. Well, this is actually what candidate X said about the hiring process. This is, you know, and have those examples ready, because this happens a lot. And we also see it as well with consultants looking to pitch for roles exclusively. They're able to say, look, we were able to provide this service to you with the last role. We'd love to work the next role exclusively. And again, it gives you a bit of, I suppose, leeway to ask for those things as well. So in terms of winning and growing your own desk, I'd definitely be prompting you to looking for exclusive, looking at increasing rates to say, this is the work that we're doing, this is how we're representing your brand in the market, and this is how we're managing your candidates that we put forward, etc., and the quality of the candidates. Because like I said earlier, a lot of the time they don't realize the work that does go into those things.
And it's quite often the job of the marketing person to have to put all them kind of reports together. When I say quite often, I mean all the time. So you know, having that data to hand, having a simple way to collect it, having a good way to turn it into kind of meaningful information, and then being able to present that to kind of showcase value, to kind of generate new candidates, new clients, is really key. I am conscious that we're running sort of out of time, Ash. Is there anything else that you think I've missed that you think's kind of important to add from a perspective of like feedback and data and?
I think we've covered a load, to be honest with you, Katie. And I think the only thing I'd mention is start small. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming to have to gather this information, but start with candidates that you place perhaps, and just put that process in place and build on it from there. Or there might be somebody in the business that can dedicate their time to doing that. And that could be an option as well. But I always say start small and grow it from there. But don't forget to follow up and actually use what you get back to grow your desk, because it is so effective. And we're all looking for it now in whatever industry we're at. So I think that's key.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I'm just going to share my screen. Just you can still see me, I presume.
Yeah.
But you're so right. Just to give the guys a second to, if anyone has got any questions, they can add. But just to say, the next webinar is around changing the mindset of consultants. No, email deliverability, and then changing the mindset of consultants around marketing, and then marketing, what we can learn from sales training for rookies. And that, I think, as that stopped sharing now, can you see me again?
You did. Yeah. You're back.
But that just brings us to a bit of an end. Ash, thank you so much for coming on and letting me pick your brains about this today. I thought it was really, really good. I've got lots of ideas. I've got loads of notes and ideas of what things that I can take away and implement. You know, and obviously we've spoken before anyway, but I will kind of follow up with you. I know that on the email that I send around, I'll include all of your connection details, so your LinkedIn and your email too. So if people want to reach out to you to kind of book a demo, have a look at the product, or just pick your brains about collecting data.
Yeah.
And how to make it into
anytime.
something.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. I don't think there is any questions in the Q&A. I'll just open it and double check. Oh, it's just whizzing around. It normally comes up. No, there's nothing there. So maybe we've covered so much.
Yeah.
We've answered everybody's questions without even realising it. But yes, thank you so much again, Ash, for taking part in this today. And I will speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Thanks so much, Katie. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.